Hey everyone, it's me HawkeyeG, and I'm here with another faction introduction video. This time I'm talking about the Western Provinces faction of Cathay, what their faction bonuses are like, what their legendary lord is like, and any unique mechanics they might have separate from other Cathayan factions. The Western Provinces in particular seem to be the easier of the two Cathay campaigns so far. You don't have to deal directly with the Bastion immediately, and you have some very easy minor provinces and factions to clean up. You can get a good hold of a lot of land before even the first set of rifts open, and not really face any direct threats until beyond the second set of rifts. The trade-off, of course, that I don't think their faction specialty is quite as good, but at least it's something different. Of course, if you're enjoying the videos, please like and subscribe as always, and don't forget to leave your feedback and questions in the comment section below. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. So to start, I always talk about the faction bonuses first. We can see them here, or we can see them from the menu here, right? These are, of course, increased cargo capacity, hero recruit rank for alchemists, ogre mercenary recruit cost, and armor for melee units. Now, most of these are actually pretty nice, right? Cargo capacity just means we can bring more cargo on a caravan trade and thus make more money. So it's not a direct economy improvement, but still results in greater income for us. The alchemist recruit rank is kind of nice too, right? Hero recruit rank is always good. Plus the alchemists are a little bit easier to increase recruitment for, right? You can get the increased capacity from just the tier 3 building. This applies to minor provinces as well. Whereas with the astromancer, you need to get the tier 4 building, so you can only increase capacity for them in major settlements, right? They also do have assassinate as one of their skills on the alchemists. So having them at a higher rank means that if you need to bring them out to do some hero actions or get rid of some agents in your territory, it's a little bit easier to do so as well. It also synergizes with something that we have on our legendary lord, which we'll look at in a little bit. Now, the Ogre Mercenaries is a little bit niche. It does synergize well with other skills in Zhao Ming's skill tree, which again we'll talk about later. But basically you are encouraged, or at least you have the option in this campaign, to make good friends with the Ogres to the south, and be able to make use of that in various ways. And then lastly, the armor bonus for melee units. Yet another feature that we will see synergize with a different skill in Zhao Ming's skill tree. This faction of Cathay is supposed to lean a little towards melee units with this and other skills. The problem is that Cathay isn't really a melee focused race after all, so I think that bonus is a little weak. But aside from these bonuses, the Western Provinces don't really have any other special differences at this time. There are some slight army composition variations, but those come more into play when we talk about the legendary lord and his army, and not quite as much apply to the faction as a whole. So with that being said, let's talk about the legendary lord. So of course we have Zhao Ming as the legendary lord for the Western Provinces. First we'll look at his unique trait and then check out his items and his skill tree. Now his trait here, as shown, Lord of the Jade Sworn, gives the 100% magic item drop chance, reduced upkeep for melee units, and 3 Yang harmony. The magic item drop chance is actually pretty impressive. It means that you're guaranteed an item drop from every single battle, which makes it easy to ensure both lords and heroes are well equipped, and you can get on a good track with that early in the game. The melee unit upkeep is nice too. Of course, any upkeep reduction is great, but it's another feature of the melee focus that Zhao Ming has specifically, and even without going full melee, you're still going to use some melee units for things like line holding or generating harmony for some of your other units. And then lastly is the Yang bonus. However, that's not really special. Every Cathayan lord has a Yang or Yin bonus associated with them, so that's actually nothing special. Now normally I would talk about the unique items Zhao Ming gets here, but he actually doesn't have any. Presumably this is because he gets the 100% magic item drop chance. Maybe it's, chicken or the egg, whichever comes first, I don't know. But hopefully you'll find something useful to equip him with. It is still pretty strange to have no unique items on a legendary lord, but as you can see, between the caravan mechanics and the being able to find them from drops, you don't have too tough of a time getting yourself some good items. But since there's no items, we're going to then talk about the skill tree. Now, he has a lot of things to talk about here, but I actually want to start with the fact that he is a dragon, okay? Unlike your other dragon-blooded lords, Zhao Ming can actually transform into a dragon. He loses access to all of his spells except for his Dragon's Breath spell, and while we see that there's this option here, you can see unlocking this just gives you the overcast and cooldown. He does have this spell by default without going down his spell tree. He also actually gets access to both the Yang and Metal Shifting caster bonuses, so we can kind of double up on casting bonuses for map-wide effects. although the Yang one, of course, isn't map wide. So I think because of this, it's worth investing a few points into this magic line, as you'll be using Zhao Ming to disrupt front lines a lot. And so even casting, one spell, like the one Dragon's Breath spell that you'll have available while he's in dragon form and getting these 2 bonuses is still going to help keep your army boosted and give you some other boosts in the area as well. Because he would lose access to these other spells when he's transformed, however, you do have to decide if you want him as a spellcaster or a melee combatant, and I think you should stick to one or the other, right? Going the magic route means you're not going to quite get as effective usage of his dragon form and flight. So personally, I do recommend kind of going down, the personal skills route, getting him some more melee skills and using him as a dragon more. But of course, you can get good spells on him too. The problem is that you just have other spellcasters that you can get as heroes. You don't really have good like melee fighters and tanks options for other heroes. So that's why I recommend focusing his dragon form instead. We can also see that his magic line is a blend of the Yang lore and metal lore, right? So we've got some metal spells, we've got some Yang spells, right? Alchemists have the same metal lore, and so since they're easy enough to get and level up as the Western provinces, I think it's another reason why his magic isn't quite as valuable. Now, besides his magic, he actually has 2 unique trees. One that applies, is unique to himself, and then another that's more like a better version of the unique tree for alchemists, right? So alchemists you would get this buffing ability, and as an alchemist you can only use that on one character, right? You get the enchanted metallurgy, you can get one of the upgrades to it, but as you can see, this doesn't say effect range on it. This has no effect range, it just affects one of your troops. With Zhao Ming, this actually has an effect range, so when you cast this spell, it'll actually affect units in the area around it, right? Obviously that's really nice to have, as it's a fairly strong buff, and this doesn't cost anything for him to use either. As for his personal skill tree, it actually does start with a decent bonus to his magic, right? We get a cooldown reduction for some Lore of Metal spells, as well as Winds of Magic cost reduction. However, if you look closely, the Winds of Magic cost reduction is specifically for the upgraded version of the spells, right? Now, Final Transmutation, we can see it right there, is already an expensive spell, so 2 Winds of Magic isn't quite enough. And while Plague of Rust is going to be cheap, I don't feel like that's a very useful spell, especially because the Overcast version doesn't give it like an area of effect. It goes from 30 to 60 armor, so I just don't find that to be really that useful. However, the rest of his skill tree up here is really nice. We can get some build cost reduction with recruit rank and capacity increase for Alchemist faction-wide. We can also get some damage increase for Zhao Ming, his army, and giving him replenishment. There's also this diplomacy bonus for ogres, as well as recruitment cost and upkeep reduction. I think this is an interesting bonus, and of course synergizes with his faction bonus as well. But ultimately, I do think the Cathay roster is balanced, and it's set up in a way to not really make use of ogres much. However, since ogres are melee units, they will tie in with the upkeep reduction and armor bonuses that we've already seen here and in the faction bonuses. And they will tie in with the next couple of bonuses that we're about to look at. Now, there's a few more random unique skills that Zhao Ming has, which are actually pretty important. I want to just briefly mention that there's this ward save in a small area around you that you can get, but the reason I came here is to talk about the weapon strength and melee attack increase for melee units. These are the pieces which tie the rest of the bonuses together, okay? In theory, if we had an army that's, half Jade Warriors and half Ogre Bulls, right? That means we have 25% upkeep reduction on all of those units because they're all melee units. However, we have a possible 75% upkeep reduction on the Ogre Mercenaries from the Lord of Shangyang skill and the faction skill for upkeep reduction for Ogre Mercenary units, right? So you could have Ogre Bulls in your army for literally 75% off upkeep, right? We also would have a total of 10% melee attack, 15% weapon strength, 5% armor piercing damage, and 15 armor bonus for all of those units, right? So it's not really my kind of playstyle, I guess, and I don't think that it's what Cathay specializes in, but you can see how adding up all of these things, we'd actually have a very affordable army in the early game, and access to some pretty decent bonuses, right? You'd be able to get the melee attack and weapon strength early, you already have the upkeep for melee units and the upkeep for Ogre Mercenaries without anything special, and if you prioritize this bonus early on, you could get recruitment cost and upkeep reduction even further for the Ogre Bulls, so it'd be possible to have a lot of bonuses for them, including the armor, without having to invest too much. It would be a theoretical early game composition, right? I think the problem is it takes a bit for all of the skill bonuses to come online. By the time you'd have all the skills built out and the territory controlled to put together a decent Ogre and Cathay melee hybrid, you'd probably already have access to some of the Cathay artillery, right? Even if you're only at tier 3, you're going to have great cannons unlocked, and you'd be starting to get access to some of their other mid to high tier units too, right? Like you'd have the crossbowmen with shields most likely. So I think you'd probably be better off switching to that than trying to, you know, make this wonky like composition out of like all melee units. Plus several of these bonuses are percentage bonuses, right? So it's a 10% a melee attack bonus, like 10%, not 10 melee attack, 15% weapon strength, not 15 melee weapon strength. I guess the 15% is probably better to have, but the point is that while the upkeep reduction would be great for the early game, the damage bonuses would be kind of negligible in cases, especially for the Jade Warriors, right? The Jade Warriors aren't going to benefit as greatly from that as the Ogre Bulls would. So really it's a better set of bonuses for the Ogre units than Cathay units, which of course is strange because we're not playing the Ogres, we're playing as Cathay. At the very least, it still makes for an interesting theoretical composition. It's a great way to shake things up for a fresh campaign or an innovative strategy, right? And especially in terms of upkeep costs, right? These Jade Warriors, we're looking at these with just 25% upkeep reduction. Imagine if we had 75% on that instead. And since we're going into mirror matchups, you know, it can be kind of nice to at least be able to approach fights with a different strategy than trying to beat an opponent on defense with the same strategy that they're going to be using. But that being said, of course, it's not the Ogres really aren't that effective against Cathay. It's easy enough for them to get halberd units and archer units, and those are going to be great counters against the Ogres. But so anyway, it's just an idea to put out there, right? If it's something that you commit to and make a decision about in the early game, right? If you're going to commit to this Ogre Kingdoms bonus, especially, that's going to be able to kind of give you just a slightly different option in the early game, something fun and something different to do, right? And even without specializing in melee, we will still see these bonuses come into play in the later game with things like Celestial Dragon Guard and the Terracotta Sentinels, so it's not like those melee bonuses would totally go to waste. Now, normally, the last bit I would cover in this guide is any unique mechanics that are special to this faction. This would be things like Scryri's Laboratory, or Elithanar's special stances, or the Cult of Sotek's plaques and sacrifices. But since we're at the start of a new game, and all these factions have the same racial mechanics, I don't have anything to add here, right? If I was going to talk about Harmony or Caravans, I would want to make that a separate video, because those things are going to apply to all Cathay factions thus far, right? So, with that being said, we've actually reached the end of today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed it and found it informative, and of course I look forward to reading your feedback and answering your questions in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.